Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Chew the Fat for this Friday. What is it? Is it the first Friday of December? I think it is. It's Jobs Day in the US anyway. And I apologize for the my usual little microphone thingy here. I can't do this today during our podcast with Gary for some reason, so I'm just using the microphone on my computer. So excuse me if the sound quality isn't quite as good as what it normally would be. So I'm sure you can hear me though. Karen, g'day, AB and Gary. Blowing a gale force winds in Melbourne and humid. Well, I'm actually going to get to that in a minute, Karen, because I just got a text message from Gary. Dean, enjoying the air conditioning in stinking hot Tamworth. Good after. Well, with a bit of luck, you might get a cool change early next week, Dean. G'day, Tony, wherever you are. We have a few Tonys, so you'll have to excuse me, those of you that are Tonys. This is Tony P. We have a Tony G as well, I think, somewhere. But anyway, good afternoon to you, Tony P. Gary won't be too far away. He did send me a text message a moment ago, but I'll get to that in a second. Karen, good afternoon to you. I hope you've had a great week. Hey, AB, we are off to Noosa in April next year, and I remember you saying that you had to book 6 months in advance into a restaurant, wondering what that was. Luke, if you want to send an email to support@tradingmastery.com, I will give you a list of all the great restaurants in Noosa. I've been living here now for nearly 20 years and pretty much got a finger on the pulse on most of the good ones. So I'm no foodie, but I can sort of point you in the right direction. Generally speaking, most of the really good restaurants around town, if you're prepared to go early, for example, Janine and I always go out for dinner in Noosa on a Friday night every week. It's just our little thing. We don't do many other things. I don't drink, I don't smoke. We do like to go out and have dinner on a Friday night together. Now we are kid-free and empty nesters. And so long as you're prepared to go between about 5:30 and 6:30, probably closer to 5:30, which I'm more than happy to do because I'm an old fart now. You'll get into most places, no problems at all. You won't have to wait. The only one is some young guys. Maybe you might have to book maybe a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks in advance if you want to go early. Good afternoon to you, Sally. Paola, good afternoon to you. What a great name, Paola. Where are you from, Paola? Where is the original is Paola? Is that Spanish? Is it Italian? Is it Portuguese? You'll have to excuse me. I like the name though. Victoria, good afternoon to you. And Michael, hi from a windy Bellarine in Victoria. Well, good afternoon to you. Now, I am going to have to keep a little eye out in our chat. I'm just keeping an eye out for Gary because he sent me a text message. I didn't know this, but apparently Melbourne, well, I should know this because I grew up in Melbourne, but apparently Melbourne has some crazy weather today and is all over the place. So Gary is running about 10 minutes late. So that's fine. That will give us a bit of a chance to have a good chin wag before he gets here. And I'm going to keep an eye out for Gary when he shows up in the chat. We do have a GB in the attendees list, but I don't think that's Gary Brown. Normally he logs in as Gary Brown. But if you are in Gary already, let me know in the chat. But I will see your name and I will promote you as panelists so we can get underway with our chat about everything tax, accounting, I've got a whole list of stuff I want to talk to Gary about this afternoon. So anyway, before Gary does arrive, what an amazing rally in Alphabet after their announcement of their new Gemini. Let me get the pronunciation correct because I had to actually Google this. I'm getting a little bit flustered with all of this artificial intelligence advancement, trying to keep up to date with it all. Generative AI. I had to actually generative AI. We actually look that up and actually see what is it? How does that differ from regular artificial intelligence? Well, generative AI apparently is able to build things and discover things and put things together for you and create things for you. Did anybody watch? I'm interested to know, did anybody watch the Gemini launch video? I started to watch it last night, when I was just sitting and Janine was watching TV, and I'm sitting there watching this launch video. And I've got to say, it was mind-bogglingly impressive, what they were doing, and what it can do is just phenomenal. Did anybody watch that video? Has anybody actually sort of kept up to date? Because what I'd really like to do in coming weeks here in Chew the Fat is I'd like to actually have a guest join us. Gary will be with us shortly. He's just trying to get around this weather in Melbourne and get back to his office. He was caught in some bad weather, and I hear those of you that are in Melbourne, Brenda's in Melbourne, and says very hot and windy in Melbourne. I think there was another couple of comments about how windy it was, and I looked it up on the internet, and it is looking like a typical Melbourne day, but summer day. Just wait half an hour and it will be gone, and it'll be from 40 degrees back down to 15. So that's generally the way it goes, right? But I want to get a guest in to Chew the Fat with us here, to help us appreciate a little bit more about AI, generative AI. What can we expect? What is genuinely realistic, and how is it going to impact us? Because I read up and I look and I watch these launch videos, and I see all this creative stuff about how you can compile all of this data and things like that. But how useful is it to someone just like me and you? Is it something that's going to have an impact on our life? I mean, I'm 53. In my lifetime, am I going to have a robot walking around my house that is going to know when I get up in the morning I like to eat certain foods and have a coffee and do certain things, and going to prepare those things for me? I don't know. How far away are these things? I mean, I've seen some videos recently of Amazon warehouses where they actually have robots literally picking the products off the shelves and packing them and sending them off. You can actually Google it and look it up yourself. So it is an incredibly exciting time ahead, and not for a minute am I trying to suggest that I'm up to speed on everything, because I just simply am not. But the technology is phenomenal, and the fact that many of us are already invested, some of us for a little bit longer than others, in the companies like Microsoft and Alphabet and Amazon and Apple, and many of you are also in things like NVIDIA and Micron and these other companies. AMD, by the way, that I talked about in the report today, will be added to the Golden Triangle list as soon as next week. Next Wednesday, we're going to do Tractor Supply is going to be our company profile of the week, and then we're going to do AMD after that. So I think that'll about round out the year for us with our live training. We might have one more week after that. So I'm just actually keeping an eye in the attendee list to see when Gary arrives, because he has been stuck in a little bit of traffic due to the weather. He is coming. He did tell me he'd be 10 to 15 minutes late, so we will just give him a little bit of time. There he is right now. So hang on a sec. I am going to promote Gary. Where's he disappeared to? He was there 5 seconds ago, and he's just disappeared. No, there he is. He's just put his hand up there. That's what happens. So when you put your hand up, you go to the top of the list in the attendees thing. Hang on a minute. I'm going to promote to panelist Gary. And Gary should be now a panelist.
Yes. Hey, Abby.
Do you have a camera?
I do, but your video can't start because the host has stopped it.
Hang on.
Maybe
1 second, and I will panelists. Where are we? What am I doing here? What do I need to do? I need to give Gary something.
Yeah. So if you click on my profile, the three buttons next to it, you should be able to change one of those ones. But yeah, can't do the video yet.
1 second.
And hello, TM. How's everyone
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
today?
Thanks, Gary, for joining us. What happened with the weather in Melbourne today? Tell us all about
Is
it.
it? I thought you would know all about this. We've got severe wind. Like, I was just walking 150 meters to the hotel to drop off some clients and get them registered in, and we were almost getting blown away. And I heard it was because there we go. I heard it was because of the cyclone that is up in North Queensland. But I'm curious that you haven't felt this. Has anyone else?
No, nothing here yet. I mean, I think there's a bit of a storm happening off Mackay. I think they might be getting a cyclone coming their way, but I did read also that it was going to be settling down a little bit. But anyway, thank you for taking some time out to join us this afternoon. You are, by the way, our very first guest on Chew the Fat. And I was just telling the guys a minute ago that what I'm hoping to do, and maybe you can actually point us in the right direction here. You might have some clients or some colleagues. I was talking to the guys about artificial intelligence, and it's just such a massive, exciting development, etc. And I'm reading up about generative AI and all these different semiconductors coming out, and company Gemini launched, and Alphabet's up 5%, and everyone's all excited about it.
Yep.
I really need to find somewhere to come on to Chew the Fat with us and actually explain to us in layman terms for the average Joe like us how it's going to impact our life. Because I can see that, okay, so Alphabet are launching this Gemini that appears to be able to be great for marketers and people doing research and putting all this stuff together.
Yep.
Is it going to impact your industry in accounting? I mean,
it's a great question. Look, I think I have two guests that I'll tee up for you, but two different perspectives. One who is quite a genius from a marketing tech entrepreneur perspective. So I will tee that up. And the other one has a AI business in beta at the moment, and I probably would get in trouble if I showed it to you. So I might not show. I mean, we could probably do it. Like, I don't know, but you know what? I don't think I'll get in trouble.
We're getting a first here, folks. What are we seeing?
Well, this is part of the AI. I can share my screen, right? Yes, I can. So give me 20 seconds, everyone.
Okay,
but let me
anyway, while you're doing that, one of the things that I've been meaning to ask you, and I think the clients would love to know, because many of them are entrepreneurial, they're business owners themselves, they're investors. You're an accountant. You've been an accountant for many, many years. You deal with hundreds of different businesses. I wanted to ask you, I mean, we invest in the stock market and publicly listed businesses. What are some of the companies that you see as an accountant are the worst industries to get into, and you would advise anyone that has kids or grandkids, stay away from these industries?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Look, my dad's a chef, so I'm going to precursor this by saying he's a chef, and he worked many hours, nights, weekends growing up. And when I was 13 or 14, he goes to me, he sat me down and I said to him, I want to be a chef like you. And he's like, you are not allowed to be a chef. And he drilled it into me. And the reason was really, one, the lifestyle. You don't have a lifestyle. Your lifestyle is what you're working when everyone else is having a lifestyle. And two, he's just a completely different way of living and running a life. So then as an adult, I now look at this and go, thank God he said that to me, because I am where I am today. But most importantly, hospitality businesses are ruthless. So going back to your question, what would I stay away from, is anything to do with hospitality. And the real basic way to think about it, and this is a bad way to look at it, but if you do everything right and you do really good food, you've got a great location, but the person next to you comes and sets up shop, they don't pay their taxes, they're not paying wages properly, and they're 20%, 30% cheaper than what you are. No matter how good you are, when someone does that, they'll take your customers away. And then it's a race to the bottom. But they don't understand that they're losing money. You might know all your numbers inside and out. They know none of it. They're not even doing the bookkeeping. So that's the biggest problem I have in the hospitality industry, is so many business owners will go into hospitality, not understand the full numbers, then they'll compete against their competition, and one of them will run out of money and go bust. On Albert Road, so people that have been to my office, but on Albert Road, there's about 8 or 9 different venues, and from time to time, I talk about each location because I've been here long enough, and they just keep cycling over new tenants.
Yeah,
and nobody's doing that. If you're
so the ones like you
business.
must have, out of all of your clients, you must have a couple of hospitality people that run businesses that do really well. What
We do, yeah.
different about them to the other ones?
You got to have a big enough venue that you can employ enough team members. So like one of our venues, they have maybe 90 to 100 team members, and they turn over 10 million, and they do quite well, but they've got enough system process people in place. They're not that small business. So when you get to the size where you're having restaurant managers in place, or you're having hotel managers, you can do multiple venues. That works really well because you're big enough, you've got the scale, and you can compete if someone was to open up next to you. Again, anyone who's in Melbourne, I was just at the Royce Hotel dropping off the clients, and that place is phenomenal. So they did the refurbishment, and it looks immaculate, but it's also the most expensive place on the strip. And it's packed right now, Friday, absolutely packed, and it's got 80 rooms above it, and it's just pumping.
What's interesting, I was over in the States a couple of years ago snow skiing, and I'm just sitting on a chairlift, and as you normally do, get talking to the person next to you. And lo and behold, this guy's from Noosa. And I said, oh, what do you do? And he said, oh, I'm the general manager of a restaurant group in Noosa, the Ogilvy Group. And as it turns out, our daughter, Abby, went to school with Brent Ogilvy's daughter.
Oh, cool.
And long story short, I said to this guy, Gary, who I've actually got to know since, I said, so how are the restaurants doing? This is just after COVID. How are the restaurants doing? Are that, you guys making money, etc.? And he said, oh, I don't think he would mind me saying this, but he said, look, we don't really make any money out of the restaurants. It's really a property thing. Yeah. We own, those of you that know Noosa, they have Le Carle, they have 3 or 4 other different restaurants, and they all kind of look similar. But it's interesting you say that, because they are a big setup where they can rotate their staff around and they can
move them around
things. Yeah. But they're more into real estate, he said. So
they would outlast
hospitality. Number one, stay away from.
Yeah, that would outlast their competitor. So someone will sell, someone else will come in and think that they can compete against them, not understanding, and then they would be able to, because they've got so many locations in the one area, they would just be able to outlast them. I bet you they do that very, very well. So we'll just do a quick watch this. I've got it all pre-set up for you guys. So again, nobody go and dob on me. As I said, I don't think I'll get in trouble. So a little bit of AI for you of what's going on. So this is my website, but you just can't see it. But what this AI has done, it's gone and scanned my whole website to be that interactive bot that talks about, that you can chat with. And the way that I think about this, and I think about websites in the next 2 years, I reckon I'm going to give it 2 years. I don't even reckon we're going to have websites, to be honest. I reckon all we're going to have is this interface type of person who's just literally read my whole website, asking some questions about the wording that I have in my website. And then from the client perspective, we'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm looking for business advice. Click on the business advice question. It'll go read more of the website and see what it needs to tell me, and to see what different things. So you can see here on my website, I must talk about business growth, financial management, strategic planning. I love strategic planning in business. So let's say that I was interested in that. And then it will, again, go into my strategic planning part of the website, which I wasn't aware I had too much detail on that. And then it will start asking some, additional questions. And it's doing all of this, obviously, behind the closed doors, but the functionality of this from a lead generation perspective in a second at some point. Ask me, blah, 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 to do this, resonate with your situation. Yeah. At a point, it's going to ask me for my data, and it will, organize a meeting. It will get the data aspect. So what I feel like it's going to happen in the website industry is in the next 2 or 3 years, the websites mostly are going to be on our phones, right? Most people look at websites on the phones. A lot of traffic goes to on the phone, and instead of having a website, you're just going to have this interactive person, and that interactive, sorry, not person, AI, the interactive AI is going to have all the data behind it to triage your situation for you, but you're just going to be answering questions.
That's incredibly impressive, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know how to
super
that works.
Impressive. I mean, we have so much content in our Trading Mastery Knowledge Center and our daily reports every day. And all the previous content from the reports for the last 4 years. I mean, are you saying that there is AI that's going to be able, that I could actually put onto there, and it would create essentially what you showed me then?
Give me 20 seconds. I should have done it on your website, not mine.
This is crazy.
So you can see, and this is just one example, right? So I've never done this. This isn't pre-set up, right? This is live happening right now. It does take, a minute or two to read everything on your website and understand it. And hopefully we don't see any bugs, because that would be awkward, but it is in the beta testing, so there could be bugs. They're doing this as a virtual sales guru, understanding your investors. You've put this artificial intelligence on our website, Trading Mastery, in the last 30 seconds, and it's doing this already. Yeah.
That's crazy.
More time. I'm obviously too impatient, but in a second you'll
Amazing.
Want to go. It should go. Maybe we just reset this. Try again.
Wow.
Yeah, so it will read, like, once we get there. And again, this isn't my software, so I can't sell anyone anything. But yeah, I've done this. I've tested on a couple websites. It's pretty, as I said, pretty cool. It will be. I'll ask the creator of this to come on, and we'll just obviously say that.
Yeah, I would love to have them on as a guest, and I'm sure the clients would love to learn more about the AI and just simple things about how the things that I'm eager to learn about is I'm not saying I'm tech savvy. I'm not tech savvy, but I use technology every day like many people. I just like to learn a little bit more about how it could make my life a little bit easier. And what are some of the things, I go on to ChatGPT and I ask it a question, but apparently you can get it to create all kinds of stuff, avatars and videos and things like that. Just the basics of that. I don't know about you guys and girls that are listening right now, whether you're finding any of these beneficial, but whether you'd be interested to learn about it, but we'll do our best to have someone on.
Cool. Here we go. So let's just real quickly just run through this to show everyone. So it has now finally read the whole website. So it knows everything about your website now. So again, are you interested in learning about?
That guy on the screen looks older than I'm talking right now.
He does. It's not a good picture. What happened?
That must be the artificial intelligence making like 20 years older. That's what it is. Ask it how old is the guy in the image.
Probably.
All right, I got a question for you, because we told everyone we talk about tax and business and things today.
We better do that.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see businesses and individuals make when it comes to their tax? What are some of the basic common things that we as investors, business owners, people, because our clients are obviously business owners and people that are submitting their tax returns, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see as an accountant on a regular basis?
I think the biggest mistake, and this is whether you're an investor or a business owner, it doesn't matter, but is actually understanding the numbers. So if I take it back and go from an investor perspective and say, what is the return on investment that you're trying to achieve? What type of asset class are you in? And would you reasonably assume that you would return that type of reinvestment and get your money's worth? Because sometimes people do come to me and they've got unrealistic expectations on their returns. And so I'd go back to, so as an investor, just having a good knowledge of knowing your numbers and knowing that. And then going back to the business owner, it's the exact same principle, but know the numbers of your business. Like, how much does it cost you to produce this pen? If you sell these pens, how much does it cost you to produce it? Time and time again, I see people that don't understand their fundamental costs of what they do, so they can't leverage off their business. They can't go back into marketing. They don't understand enough, so they scale. And if you scale a business that's losing money because they don't understand the cost of it, then you scale it to $10 million, you're still going to be losing money. So if you can't get your cost valuation properly, then you're just scaling a pile of dog poo. So what I would say is understanding the numbers. And the best example I've got for everyone here is one for myself, one of my own businesses. So I have a structural steel business. We install structural steel on commercial and residential property. So anything with the steel stuff, I personally don't do it, but I own 70% of the company. And one of my good friends and clients, they want some parking bollards. So they've got a business in Sydney. They want a couple hundred parking bollards every single month. And I'm like, yep, no worries, let's get it sorted. So I run all the numbers on this to make sure it's all feasible and it all makes sense. And we've got to buy some materials and stuff from overseas. And it takes my friend, it takes him 6 months to place the order. So I done all the costings 6 months earlier. So it was around January or February, I did all the costings. He gave me the purchase order in, must be August. And I just naturally assumed that everything was the same. Like, why would it be different? Like, I did the costings once, it should be right. And the two I see at the business, my brother Kevin, he goes, it's all good, place the order, make it all happen. And I just had this feeling I'm going to double check the numbers. So I looked at what we originally priced everything at and what it was going to be today. And the biggest thing is, if anyone, quickly look in the chat box, if anyone can guess what the biggest thing that happened between, say, January this year to like even now, it's the same now, if you've got a slight inkling of what that is. But material costs went up just a little bit, not much, like 5 or 10%, but the currency killed me. So the currency, being Australia, was a lot weaker. The Australian dollar got a lot weaker, and that killed me. So I lost out on the materials, and two, I lost out on the currency. And because of that factor, I was going to, if I placed the order of 500, bollards, then I would have actually lost about $7,000.
Amazing. It's funny you say about the building industry, and you're in that with the steel business. Now look at this, grown men crying. Like so many times I'm seeing right now on news.com. I'll quickly read you this. GDK Group collapses into liquidation, owing 45 million, 30 staff sacked on the spot on Friday morning. I'm assuming you're referencing currency and interest rates, but the currency there before. I mean, the thing about it, I find out, like, I'm looking through this article and I'm seeing the image of this business, but they've still got the big Mercedes and Audi SUVs out the front of the company.
Yeah.
People, I'm listening to podcasts a lot. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about higher prices. The cost of living is higher, but at the same time, they've got $80,000 F-150s and trucks parked in their driveways. Everybody whinges about prices are higher, but I'm not finding Australians are spending less money. I mean, as an accountant, are you finding that businesses that you're dealing with genuinely doing it tougher with high interest rates or not?
Good businesses aren't. So good businesses will find a way, they will pivot, they will enhance, they will do what they need to do. And that's the nature of being an entrepreneur or a business owner, is that you have to be able to pivot and change strategy. That's what the good businesses will do. Now, sometimes people have something will go wrong in their life and they'll step away from the business inadvertently and they'll take the eyes off the ball. But a lot of these construction companies that are going bust, you're 100% right. Like they'll have 15 cars that are, 50 grand, 60 grand Hiluxes, and they're giving them out to their apprentices. And I'm like, dude, and okay, if we want to say an apprentice needs a car, fine. They don't need a 50 grand or 60 grand Hilux. So,
yeah. I mean, so many of these businesses also, with what is it? We're 2023. Basically, since 2011, the RBA put rates down to zero nearly, and then they put them back up to 4.35.
Yeah.
And the US had interest rates effectively for 10 or 12 years at zero. So an entire generation of business owners and mortgage holders have gotten used to interest rates either being zero or going down, 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 and down. And I would put money on it, the ones that are going bust, those building companies, I bet that's not a 65-year-old, 70-year-old family-run business. That's a 30-year-old, 40-year-old building company that exploded between 2010 and 2020, that they leveraged, they got everything going, and now they've never handled high interest rates.
Yeah, and they probably anyone, I don't remember the name, but there's a Perth builder that just went bust 2 days ago. They do 100 or 150 builds a year, so quite big. And they had ATO debt outstanding since 2018. And it blows my mind that you can have 18 outstanding, 19 outstanding, 20, 21, 22, technically 23 before they went bust. There's a Domino's franchise. Domino's is obviously a franchise that the stores. There's the Domino's that went bust in Geelong, owing $350,000 in super.
Well, one of the things, actually, sorry to butt in, I just read at the bottom of that article that I was just mentioning that the people that actually were the ones that tipped this building company over was the tax office. And I wanted to ask you, because I had a contact of mine on the Gold Coast that had a big boat dealership business that just went under for about 23 million. And one of my mates said, no, what it would have been is the tax office would have caught up with him. And I've heard, and I've just actually written down a little question for you. Is the tax office being more brutal today with overdue taxes than they have been in the past?
Yeah. So during COVID, they did nothing.
Right.
So that was, I don't know, for some reason, they did no debt collection. I mean, it was logical why they didn't do it, but they did no debt collection at all. So then businesses that should have collapsed in 2020, 2021, 2022 didn't, because we had this vacuum of no one shutting down businesses. I think it was liquidators would have almost had to shut down their business because there was nothing going on.
Yeah.
And now the approach is they're going after it. I read that there's 10,500 small businesses with over $1 million in tax debt.
10,500 with more than a bill.
Something disgusting like that. And I was like, okay, I know 2 clients that have over $1 million.
I've got a mate of mine. I know Madison is in Geelong. I got another mate of mine that runs McGrath Partners down there in Geelong, and Dave Cordis, and he's been telling me that he's got people in the real estate industry that they haven't been looking after their tax payments in the last couple of years, and now the tax department is just they're being ruthless.
Yeah.
So take that, guys. That those of you that have got tax bills, get them paid, get them up.
Yeah, and you need to. It's especially if you're a business owner. So the way that they go after you now is they can personally make you liable for your tax debt. So they give you DPNs or director penalty notices. So you're personally liable for it. So even if you've got these DPN for 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, and you want to liquidate the company, you can liquidate the company. You still got to pay the bill.
So they'll garnish bank accounts, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And okay, so pre-COVID, they would garnish bank accounts. I've not seen a client be garnished since pre-2020. So that hasn't come back yet. So it will happen eventually, but I haven't seen that yet. Okay,
now I was looking at Facebook this morning and I saw a post of yours, a long post about a little challenge that you had recently with the tax department having to justify your Maserati.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
So the lovely ATO, they do early intervention, and they target 5 of your clients, and they review all your the tax returns of those clients, and they ask you questions. So they're not auditing those clients, but if you don't give them the right answer, they're going to get an order. So I did a post about this a couple of days ago. I was actually really annoyed about that because I wasted a couple hours. But this morning it resonated with me at the very end of that. So I've just been defending these clients, and I knew everything about their stuff because I did some pre-research. And thankfully, I think we're all good on those 5 clients. But at the very end, they're like, "Oh, we're just going to have a look at your stuff." And I'm like, "My stuff? Hang on a second. This isn't a
I'm an accountant.
what are you doing? Why are you targeting me now? You didn't tell me this." And they're like, and this is the bit that got me, and this is what really pissed me off. They said, based on your insurance records, you own a Maserati. And I'm like, yes, I do own a Maserati. And they're like, why do you need that for the business? And I'm like, huh. So the insurance company is telling you own a Maserati. That's nice of them.
So they know, they've got that information through the insurance company.
Yeah. So the insurance is now, and I remember this a couple of years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but I remember that they changed the legislation that the insurance companies will now data match or give data to the ATO to catch out the people that, again, have the Maseratis, the Ferraris, and no income. So, yeah. So
So for those business owners listening now, or even just investors, those 5 people that tax office was asking questions about,
yeah,
were they targeting them because of something in particular?
No, like they didn't have any Maseratis, like low income earners, maybe between 50,000 profit and $150,000 profit, so nothing like special in any way or nothing major.
Yeah.
They were just targeting them, and this is because, this is my opinion, is that if you're a sole trader, so you run a business under your own personal name, you've got a target on your back with ATO. Because 2 years in a row, we've had now 10 people looked at, all sole trader businesses.
Really?
None of them were individual tax returns. None of them were trust or companies or super funds. All 10 of them were sole traders. And I asked the question point blank. I said that it seems like you're targeting sole traders, and they say that they're not, but 10 out of 10 says that they are. So
like, you've got a successful business. You decide to have a Maserati under the business, whatever.
Yeah.
What happens if you tell them it's none of your business? Go away. I mean, what's the big deal?
That's effectively what I said. But I just, so when you buy a car that's over the luxury tax threshold, you don't even claim all of the depreciation anyway. So it's not like you're claiming 200 grand depreciation on the Maserati. So the tax benefit there isn't as much as what the guy was probably thinking it was, or girls, so guys and girls were thinking it was in the call. So, and if you can justify it, like, again, I drive out and see clients. So we use a statutory method. So there's certain methods that we use with ATO that comes from the ATO. We're using their method, and that's how we claim it under the business. So I go from my office to their place. Sometimes you'll see me drive out to regional Victoria. And the beauty is, and this is how I structure myself, I live 100 meters away from my office. So my car, honest to God, gets used 70% for work because I walk to work every day. And we drive 1 kilometer to the supermarket and back. Like,
I get it.
So literally 70% would be work related. So they can't do much about it, because you, as a business owner, you have the right to choose if you want to spend the money on a Toyota, Holden, Ford, Maserati, whatever it is. You have that right to choose that. So, but
if in the case of my business,
Yep.
say Trading Mastery, I don't really go out and see clients. So let's just assume I lease a Bentley, whatever, and I put it under the business, and I'm not really using it for business. I really can't write that off against the business, right?
Yeah, so the word write-off is probably the wrong word, but we would use a statutory method. So we would use a defined method by the ATO to get some form of benefit. But you might find that if we're really not using it for business, like say 10% or 5% for business, that's all we could justify, then we'd probably buy it under your personal name.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. Let's get on to some questions I always get asked from clients about investing. Some of our clients are getting sort of towards that latter stages of their working life into retirement. So let's just paint a scenario today where, and I think you guys and girls listening, you can put some comments in the chat for Gary and I, probably more for Gary than me, but let's just assume that I have a portfolio today. I've set up a self-managed super fund, or I just simply have a couple of $100,000 worth of shares, and I own those shares to my retirement age, 65 or 66. I don't know if that's actually officially the retirement age by the tax office, but anyway, most Australians say 65 is retirement. And I finish my work. I've got no more income from my work anymore, and I've sold my business or whatever, and I'm now retired, and I've got this nice portfolio of, let's say, $1 million worth of shares, and I'm getting 50 grand worth of dividends. So I'm 66 years of age. I've got $1 million in shares, and I'm getting, let's say, 50 grand in dividends. Paint a little picture for those clients listening today. What are they up for in tax? Do they pay no tax because they have no income? How does it work with respect to if they want to sell some shares? Will they pay tax on the capital gains?
Yep.
Is it different if it's in a self-managed super fund versus a personal name?
Yeah. So this is actually a really great question because I have these conversations with people every week. So just because you stop working or you hit 60 or 65 or even 70, individually, as an individual taxpayer, it means nothing. You will still pay tax based on your income. So people say to me, but Gary, do I have 600,000 in my super fund? Do I take it out and invest it under my personal name because I'm retired now? And the answer is no. So in simple terms, so let's say that you made a 10% return, whether it's dividends or capital gains. And let me share my screen. Make a 10% return, so you make $60,000. You have 60,000 taxable income at the age of 100. It doesn't matter how old you are, between 18 and 100. Rephrase, between 18 and 120 years old, it's irrelevant. So you have $60,000 worth of income. You're going to be paying some form of income tax. In this case, we'll be paying $11,000 in income tax. So people ask me all the time is whether I should take it out of super to put it into my own name and then invest. The answer is no, because you're going to pay that 11 grand. You're better off leaving it in super, doing a self-managed super fund, paying the accounting fees, but saving 11 grand on taxes per year. And then another point that people always ask me is that once you hit the magic number is 60 for super, but once you hit 60, we can start drawing down on the super fund. And when we draw down on the super fund, we just take out like a wage every week, the same number, $500 or $1,000 or whatever you want it to be. But you just do it regularly, the same number over and over and over again. So you can just set up as an automatic transfer. So you get used to that money hitting your bank account. And then you build your portfolio around providing you with that income stream. So again, you don't necessarily have to sell down shares to equal that withdrawal. Hopefully it can come from some forms of dividends.
Okay, so let's assume it's me. I'm 53. Yep. I keep investing in when I'm 65. I don't think this is going to happen because I enjoy what I'm doing. But let's say I get to 65. You're saying I can start to do this at 60, but let's say I do it at 65.
Yeah.
I don't want to sell any shares, so I keep the compounding effect happening on the portfolio. But the dividends that I'm getting, let's say I'm getting by then $60,000 worth of dividends.
Yeah.
Can those dividends be that regular cash
Correct.
I take out? And that's basically tax-free.
In that setting, absolutely, it would be tax-free. So once you're over 60, the super fund would be tax-free, the capital gains and the dividends. So you'd be taking that pension withdrawal out, so say 60 grand or $1,200 a week, and it will be tax-free. And even better yet is the super fund would get a refund on the franking credits because the super fund doesn't pay tax. So it gets a refund on the dividends that have the franking credits attached to it.
Yeah. This is
So
really important for all of you guys and girls that haven't got self-managed super funds yet, but you've got spouses and partners and you've got like 125 grand each or 150. You can combine them together, or if you've got 250 or more, this sort of stuff is so effective, because many of you that are in your 40s and 50s, by the time you get to 65, your super fund and the dividends you get from many of the businesses is probably going to be quite significant. And therefore you can have a tax-free income.
yeah. And it's much better. One, this isn't financial advice, but it's much better to start building your assets up inside the super fund after the age of 50. So, you can see the runway. You talk about the runway all the time. You know where the runway is. It's not that far away, but you're better off building that asset up inside the super fund, because worst case scenario, you're paying 15% tax. Best case scenario, you pay 0% tax. So you build it up under the super fund between that 50, 55, 60, 65, and keep going, up to 75 with contributions that we can do. And you build that asset up, because you're better off having it in that environment of the super fund, getting taxed between 0 and 15%, than not having it there at all.
So what about, okay, so we get our dividends, we can get those tax-free because we can use it as a wage.
Yep.
What about our capital gains? If we've got $2 or $3 million in, or just say the portfolio has gone from a value of $500,000 to $2 million, and I want to start to also sell a few shares here and there to be able to go on that nice European holiday. What sort of tax am I going to be paying?
Yeah, so thanks for using that exact example of 2 million. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated, so I'll make it as simple as I can. If you one person, one individual, and you have a portfolio of $2 million, then $1.9 million doesn't get taxed, and $100,000 does get taxed. So mathematically, 95% of all the income that you make in dividends and capital gains is tax-free, and 5% would be taxed. And therefore, the 5% that is taxed is getting taxed at 15%. So if on the $2 million, you make a 10% return, so $200,000 return, you would then get basic maths, you get 5% of that would be taxed, so $10,000, and then the $10,000 would be taxed at 15%, so $1,500 of tax off the $200,000 capital gain or dividend that you generated. You get a little bit of.
What about for me, that mine will be, I'm not boasting here, but just the fact there's going to be multiple of millions.
Yeah,
I'm going to get that 1.9 up to 1.9.
Yeah.
But the balance, what am I going to pay on tax on the balance? And this
15%.
15%. Okay, that's still pretty good.
That's ridiculously cheap too, right?
Yeah.
So, and the only caveat that I'll put on this is under the current tax system. So there is Labor does look like trying to change, or may change, may not change. But if they do change something, I'm not responsible for what happens in 5 years or 10 years if they change the law. But right now, that's the current way it works.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to get to a couple of questions, guys. So there's a few questions that have popped up in the chat. We'll get to them in a minute. Actually, there's a few other things we'll touch on towards the end that are sort of more trivial, but let's actually get a couple of things here. Greg saying, I have a proprietary company as the trustee of the discretionary trust that owns the shares. How can I access this at age 65 or 67 and pay minimum or no tax? I think we just answered that, didn't we?
Because he owns it under the trust, then the trust will distribute the gains, so the dividends, to the individual. So it's at the age of 65 or 67, it's irrelevant. It's the same tax system for you, Greg, for the last 40 years and for the next 40 years, because it's under a trust rather than a super fund. But what you may do, and again, I don't know your situation, but you may do, if you were to look at moving the money into a self-managed super fund, you may be able to do contributions, and those contributions might be able to move the money across there, so you do pay no tax. But again, subject to your situation.
Carl's just asking, what if your portfolio is not in a super fund but in a trust?
Yeah, so exact same there, Carl. Again, let's just assume the portfolio is 200 or 250. Then you could just look at moving it into a self-managed super fund. And even if you have capital gains, and this is some of the maths that I've done for people in the past, they might not have made super contributions for 5 years. And you have done 5 years worth of contributions, you might be entitled to do put $110,000 into the super fund and get a tax deduction for it. So you might have turned $100,000 investment into $200,000, made $100,000 capital gain. We contribute the whole $200,000 into super, and you pay zero tax personally because we get a tax deduction of $100,000 worth of contributions in. So there's different methods that you can do to reduce that down if that is in your situation, Carl. Maybe someone else is in it as well.
And it is important, everyone, that you do appreciate we're all just generally banter here, general advice only, but it is extremely helpful. So thank you very much, Gary.
Yeah.
Rachel's asking thoughts on adding my 20-plus-year-old children to my self-managed super instead of then contributing their money to Australian super. I didn't even
think to that.
Yeah. Is that
absolutely possible? The only caveat that I will say on it is when you add them into the super fund, they need to be part of the decision making of the investment side. So say you add them in, they're $20,000, they got $20,000 holding. The 20-year-old probably has maybe $5,000, $10,000. Bring them to the journey of wealth creation. Take them through that journey. Teach them the shares. Teach them that journey. Use it as a vehicle. It might be a small holding, but don't just make all the decisions for them, because then they might have resentment later if it doesn't go well. But if they're part of the investment strategy, if they're part of the decision-making process, then it should work out fine.
So I've got a self-managed super fund, Gary.
Yep.
I got 3 kids. Two of them are in university at the moment. One of them works for Lululemon.
Yep.
He has they're obviously contributing to his super fund there.
Yep.
Can I have them contribute that money to my self-managed super fund?
Absolutely, because they become a member. Your son could become a member of your super fund, and then we transfer his super across to it, and then his employer contributions can get paid into it.
And then we just have to. I'm talking about because you're my accountant.
Yeah.
I'm getting free tax advice here, guys. Have you seen what I've done here today? No, but I'm saying I just have to keep track of the contributions that come in and what's allocated to him.
Yeah, but I mean, in your situation, it's very easy for us to know because we know who the contributions when they get paid to the bank account, it has certain references. So we would know who the contributions were for. So you just look at the bank statement, really easy to understand. And then from an accounting perspective, it's not, you don't join a super fund and automatically I'm one member, you're one member. It's now 50-50. I know exactly how much your money is, how much your wife's money is, and how much your son's money is, for example. And then I would allocate a percentage of profit to your son's super. Or say it's 5%. So 5% of the profit goes to his super based on his level of balance over the total balance of the super fund.
Right. So to answer your question, Rachel, I think it is a yes, but you've got to make sure that you involve them in the process, but also you've got to be very careful on, are you a decent investor? Basically, are you going to get a better result than Australian Super is going to get? I'm hoping that the answer is yes, but that's to answer your question there.
And don't do.
Sorry, Gary.
I would just suggest that we wouldn't do speculative investments. I do, not one of my clients, but my client is that the child. We'll use the word child here. But my client's a child, and he's like 28, 29, and his parents have this self-managed super fund, and they just went out and did like such, not even stock market type of stuff, but they went out and bought like a quarry and some farmland, and they just blew up the super fund. So again, buying good quality stocks, good quality investments, much better than the speculative ones, because it's also not your money if it's your children as well.
Yeah. Steve-O says, at tax time, the accountant asks me if I want my contributions to be either concessional or non-concessional in my self-managed super. Shouldn't the accountant tell me what's best?
I hope you're not. I hope you're not one of my clients. No. Yeah, I agree. Like the simple reality is, the accountant should be working that out. Sometimes, if the super fund gets done at a different time than your individual tax return, Sevo, you might find that that's the reason why that question gets asked. But generally speaking, my firm, the way we like to do is do everything at the same time.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. This might sound like a really dumb question, but because I don't have this structure, and I'm not familiar with it, but let's assume someone has a job, they're investing into an industry super fund, they finish their career, they retire at 65 or 70 or whatever, and they access that money, is that money just sent to them in a lump sum and like, there's your 300,000, go for your life, best of the British to you? Is that the way it works, or can you get it out in drip feed?
You can take it out in dribs and drabs, but most people in Australia that I'm just thinking about the correct political words here, that are probably uneducated on how you should look at your retirement, would just take the 300 grand out and put it in their bank account.
And most of them would blow it.
That 100% they do blow it, because they've never had that type of money before in their life, just sitting there and available to them. And then over the next 3, 4, 5 years, it's gone. And unfortunately, and we see this time and time again, then they will go back to like, on the Centrelink or something like that. So we see it from our children might be like, say, the children might be like, say, 40 or 50, and they're trying to get their parents who are, say, 70 to come speak to us, or they've just had a big windfall, and the parents, unfortunately, a little bit stubborn, and they don't come see us. And then in 3 years' time, they're like, yeah, they blew it all.
Yeah.
And, I
think, Kieran, your question about savings plan, etc., it's sort of more of a personal financial question. Send us an email to support@tradingmastery.com, and we'll sort of do our best to come back to you and might be able to try and answer that. I think that might be a more long-winded question to answer. Just a couple of quick ones. If you have your shares in a company, what are the benefits offset the income against expenses? Now, that's the worst way you can have it in a company.
Right. So don't own any. If your structure is just a pure straight company, you should not own any investments in that, because you will not get a 50% discount on the sale of those investments, and therefore you'll pay more tax than I will.
Yeah. Janine says, if someone has just moved to Australia, 60 years working, and only now started paying super, so they're 60, moved to Australia, only started paying, has large shareholding investment and doesn't need salary to live on, if they were to start a self-managed super, how much of their salary could they potentially put in?
Well, you could put in 100%. Like, you could put in up to $27,500 as a super contribution in from a tax deduction perspective, and then you can do 110,000 non-concessional contribution, or 3 years worth of that. So, Janine, in that context, you might go, and again, we're just spitballing here, you might go, you've got a good sized portfolio, you might transfer that into a self-managed super fund, or you might transfer 300 grand into it to start it off. Again, depending on what that definition of large is, obviously that's what I would look at and go, okay, one, if you've got a large portfolio, it should be under a trust, and two, if it's not under a trust, it should be under the super fund. And that's how I would structure it. So, and I'll try to move as much as I can to the super fund, adhering to the contribution limits.
Yeah. And Janine, I think with what you're talking about, you should contact Trading Mastery, and we'll put you in touch with Gary, because by the sounds of it, you might need some help with that. I'm just offering if you want to have a chat with the guys and potentially sort something out there. I think the question to answer to you, Claire, just confirming I can add my son's super into my self-managed super, as he doesn't obviously have the minimum 250 required to set up his own self-managed super fund. That was exactly what I was thinking, Claire.
Yep, correct. So yeah, so
with my son, yeah.
So absolutely can, Claire. Even I'm just going to use 5 grand as a minimum balance, and mostly because it's probably going to cost you $100 or $200 in, we'll call it admin fees to get it done. Like, my office, we normally do it for like $100 or $200, depends on the complexity of it. So just like something that it's not, like, you wouldn't do $1,000, but
can you have sub accounts, or does it have to be all in one account, Gary?
The way you would do it from an investment perspective is, if you wanted to, the way I would do it is, if you wanted to have like an index fund for their 20 grand, then you just set up the index fund for it, and you just be very clear that that 20 grand relates to that members. And then if we could, as an accountant, if we can clearly make that happen, we would be able to push it or stream that income to that member. But if it's just all over the place and you're like, oh, 5 shares here, 2 shares here, 1 share here, it'd take too much time to do it.
Yeah. I think that answers your question, Bruce, about having their own set up there. So excellent. Now, there's a bit of a curly one from Julian, and then we'll start to ask a couple of questions that off the tax subject, just to finish up today and have a bit of fun. We'll be retiring to Croatia, Julian says. Do you happen to know if the tax situation with super fund would be very different there? Well, yeah, if they have the super fund here, retire there.
Yeah.
How does the tax department view that?
The question, that's actually a really hard question, by the way. The question is whether you will still be, one, an Australian citizen, and two, you still come back to Australia enough times in a year. And if the answer is you don't come back to Australia enough, then you're not allowed to have a super fund or Australian super fund, self-managed super fund. You'd have to move back to an industry or retail fund or take the money out.
Yeah.
But I personally, I would be very clear. Like, if you want to do that, that's awesome. But I'd be very clear about how much you're going to come back to Australia, and then get the right advice around the strategy from a tax perspective and from the super side, because you just want to be clear about what those rules are.
Cool. And Shane and Nicole, if you're about to start a self-managed super, can you then transfer your private share portfolio to the new self-managed super fund portfolio? I think the question is yes, but there would be...
It'd be part of the contribution. So you'd have to meet the contribution caps, be within those caps, but plus there may be capital gains. You may be able to offset those capital gains against some of the contributions that you've done. But again, if you just send me an email, reach out to Trading Mastery, support at Trading Mastery.
I think Shane and Nicole are setting up the self-managed super through you anyway, from memory. I
100% think they are the right Shane and Nicole, but it would make sense.
Okay, cool.
I do know Shane and Nicole.
Fantastic. All right. Well, anyone that has any questions about any of that tax stuff, send your email to support@tradingmastery.com. We'll collate them together and we'll get them off to Gary, and we'll get some answers. Now, Gary, what do you think of the new Cybertruck?
I'm actually so excited for it for my steel business. I think it's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. It's got to be the ugliest looking thing going around, though, don't you think? I mean, it is pretty damn ugly.
Yeah. Look, did you see the airflow? I'm not an engineer, guys, and I didn't write this down, but the airflow dynamics of it on a highway or something, it says that it's the same, almost the exact same as like a Bugatti.
Yeah. So, I mean, I saw all those sort of like that speed test, and it was towing a Porsche and it beat the 911. I'm sort of like thinking, do people really care about that stuff, that it goes really fast at like 250 kilometers an hour? Like, who's going to drive it that fast?
Yeah. Well, you're definitely not going to go, well, nobody should be going 250 in it, right? But I mean, tradies do, to be honest. Like, I have a lot of tradie clients, my family, my team members, they do love fast stuff, right?
I mean, you're in the tradesman industry with your business as well as your clients. And also, I'm interested to know if any of our clients are tradies. If you're a tradie, would you buy a Cybertruck?
In my business, yes. And the reason for it is that we spend per vehicle, we're spending between, say, 300 and 500 on our trucks, our actual trucks, like 300 to 500 per truck. And our utes probably $200 a week in petrol. So if we can get the utes and we're saving $200 a week in petrol, that's huge if it's just running off the electricity. And we're not doing that. It might be like 50 kilometers in a day there and back. So maybe 100 kilometers in a day. It's just Melbourne driving. So
yeah.
Like, in theory, the theory is I can't wait to come to Australia because we'll probably buy one or two. But yeah, so I think they'll go quite well.
Actually, I was actually surprised how inexpensive they were. I think even the top of the range one was only about $80,000 US.
Yeah, US.
Yeah,
we have clients
a lot more than that here, obviously, but
even we have clients that buy the F250s or 150s.
Yep,
and they've spent more money than that. They've spent mega money. So.
All right. Yeah. Well, look, let's. We're going to finish up in a minute or two, but before we do that, let's have a little bit of fun. What are you watching, listening to, or doing right now? You got any favorite podcasts? You got any favorite TV shows?
Yep.
What are you watching? What are you reading? Are you a reader?
I am not a reader. I read enough tax every single day, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Too much. But what I'm listening to, so I'm a big fan of the All In podcast. That's That's my favorite.
Tell us
Actually,
more. What's the All In podcast?
so that's got two billionaires, one non-billionaire, but they just talk a lot about all things. They do a podcast pretty much every 3 days. They talk about all things political stuff, business stuff. It's from the US. It's one of the most listened to, and it's just so. Mark Holtman, he got me onto it. Actually, it's got they have a lot of Tesla stuff on there, so a lot of Elon Musk talk goes on there.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's a guest. They were at SpaceX when one of they did the launches and that type of stuff.
So do they have guests and things, or are they just the same?
They have some guests, yeah. So they have.
Okay.
They had most recently they had one of the foreign advisor to Donald Trump, who was then talking about the whole Ukraine plus Middle East situation that's going on. So they sometimes have some really cool guests.
Right.
But that's probably my favorite one that I'm listening to at the moment. I listen to audiobooks.
Any Netflix docs that you're watching at the moment? Anything good?
No docs, but I'm watching. I like the Power series on Stan. So anyone who watches any of that type of stuff,
I was just thinking. I sat through the other night. I watched Boom Boom Becker, the Boris against the world against Boris or something like that. That was on Apple.
Yeah.
And I watched a couple of other ones on Netflix. I can't remember. And anyway, after dinner the other night, Janine's turned on Netflix and she's got the latest documentary on Pamela Anderson. She's got one out. Yeah, so they're all into it, and I sat there and I just this woman, they were talking about the whole Tommy Lee porno tape and all this sort of stuff, and
she did it the hard way. If you think about it, she did it the hard way. Nowadays, people just set up the OnlyFans accounts and they go on. Farmer Wants a Wife, and then they get their 15 minutes of fame and they set up the OnlyFans page.
Yeah. Did you know Nick Kyrgios has an OnlyFans page?
I did not know.
He does. Apparently he does. Yeah. Anyway, last one. And this is for everyone in the room with us today to Beckham. That was the other one, Claire, that I watched. Beckham. That was an awesome one. The Beckham one. So thank you for that. So everybody else has to contribute to this last question as well in our podcast today. What is one word that your parents used to use that is so old-fashioned and is outdated? What is it when you grew up? Any one word or phrase that your parents used to use that drove you crazy? It even drives you crazy now if they still use it.
My dad says fair dinkum way too much.
Really?
Way too much.
Fair dinkum.
I don't know how he can possibly attempt to put it into so many sentences.
Right.
But he tries to put it into them and it just irritates me.
The one, yeah, it's like up in North Queensland, everything's A. Yeah, good A. How you going, A? But the one for me is my mum and dad are not with us anymore, but I used to go to my parents' place and mum used to yell out, "Tea's ready." I'm like, tea? What?
Having a cup of tea?
Isn't it? Or in the US, the older people there, I think they use the word supper. It's supper. So
I think I definitely use the word tea, dinner. Yeah, I'd say tea sometimes. Yeah. I'm going to make sure I use it around you a bit more.
Well, yeah. Well, it's old fashioned, Gary. You got to get with the times. Jay says codger is one. Sally says darling.
Yeah.
Nice to be important to be nice. Okay.
I like Karen's one there. If you pull her face, the wind will change. It'll say that way. Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, I remember when my mum, she caught me when I was a little kid picking my nose once, and she told me that was what caused pimples. When I was a little kid, I was like, "Oh, okay, fair enough, Mum." It's amazing that the little fibs and the lies you tell your kids that you just know that are not true.
It's all for good intentions too, especially this time of the year. We have Scarlett. Scarlett's like 20 months now, and little bit too young to understand what Santa is, but 100% going to be lying to her for many years about that.
Yeah. Fiddlesticks and poppycock. There's a good one. So, all right. Well, where are you taking Jenny for dinner tonight? Are you going out for dinner, or is she...
We're actually entertaining two clients from Sydney. We are going to go, for all those that know Melbourne, let me just remember the name. It's a new place in Richmond called Kekou, Kekou, like a Greek fusion Asian place. It's
Not one of
fantastic.
George's restaurants, is it?
I
Columbaris?
don't know. I know George Columbus. I don't know. I think I would know that if it was. I think it'd be plastered on the walls.
Yeah.
But it's a fabulous place on not Victoria Street, but it's in Richmond. It's the one before Victoria Street.
And is Melbourne still sort of recovering from COVID, in that you've got to book restaurants like months and months in advance still?
Probably not. I'd say that the good ones, like, the really, really good ones, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance. But this one, again, don't go out and tell everyone about it, because I really like being able to rock up and not booking into it. So don't ruin it for me. But there's still some gems out there that you can just rock up and do your thing on a Friday.
All right. Well, I think Lawrence has got the best one of the day. Eat the crust; it will put hair on your chest.
That is a goodie. I did hear that. Queen Street. Sally, have you been there, Sally? It's to Queen Street.
There you go. All right, Gary, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We'll wrap it up there, guys. I hope you enjoyed this Friday's Chew the Fat. A little bit different to normal. We'll try and get some more guests on the program, and maybe, Gary, we can get you back about once every 4 or 5 weeks.
Sure.
And we'll continue on and help our clients out. So thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Thank you to Gary, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.